Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to the M4J network here on OpenTTD. It has been quite a while since the last episode. I do apologise for that. One word is the reason for that: maps. Trying to create all the maps for this episode has taken way longer than I expected. And I don't even know at this moment in time whether the maps are going to be visible on the screen or not. So I could have wasted my time, you never know. Today's episode is episode number 10, and I'm just getting up my episode plans so I can see what's going on. So originally it says complete all speed limit sheets for lines out of Guard City Termini, and then create skeleton services out of GSJ, Guard City St. John, and GSP, Guard City St. Peter. So in other words, skeleton services on the Guard City Great Eastern and the Guard City Great Western routes. Sort of done that. The routes, yes, done. And you'll see some trains coming out later on in the episode. At the moment, you can see me here time-lapsing, rebuilding one of the depots. This is going to be the depot for Guard City Great Eastern. Not necessarily the depot for all trains out of GSP, but for the Guard City Great Western, not Eastern. Guard City Great Western franchise. This will be the depot that those trains use. The only thing I haven't done for this episode is all of the speed limit sheets. I have, at the time of recording this, completed the sheets out of GSMI as well, Guard City St. Michael. And you'll be able to see me placing the trains for that, and also doing some rebuilding next episode, episode 11. There will also be a sub-episode, episode 10.5, that will be going out possibly this weekend. I'm tempted to upload it either this Saturday or Sunday, and that will show a little bit of the behind the scenes of GSJ and GSP, some of the track work that I've done, the rebuilding, building the depot, or talking through the depot at the other end of things on the Guard City Great Eastern line. And doing some of the waypoints and speed limits sheet creation and stuff like that. So anyone who's interested in behind the scenes stuff, it's not considered part of the main series, so you don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but those of you who are interested in that side of things, you can stay tuned for that. I will tweet when that's going up. I'll also do a little announcement right now. My Facebook page, which I've just finished putting new logos and trying to actually be actively putting stuff on there again. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be shutting down my Facebook, to be honest, because I've had a bit of a falling out with Facebook over renaming of the page. It's still called Jeffries when I want it to be called M4J. They won't let me change the name, which is incredibly frustrating. So all in all, with regards to that, I think I'll be shutting down my Facebook, which means in order to keep up to date with all things M4J, you have one of three options. You can follow me on Twitter. Everything I do, I tweet about, and then sometimes that tweet then gets shared over to Facebook as well. You can go on my website and look at all the upload schedules and stream schedules. And I'm trying to be more proactive, where if an upload changes for whatever reason, I remove it from the calendar or I amend it if necessary. And the other place you can follow me is on Reddit. I'm going to be posting a lot more to the M4J_gaming subreddit. I'm trying to remember the web link. I think it's something like reddit.com/M4J_gaming. Something along those lines. I will put a link to it in the description if I remember. If you go down there and there isn't a link for it in the description, please let me know and I'll add it. So yeah, Facebook is kind of winding down in terms of me using it. I'm not particularly enjoying my Facebook experience at the moment. It might change in the future. You never know. Anyway, to get back to the episode. We are now planning the services out of GSJ. There are... I'm trying to remember how many there are now. Out of GSJ, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 services currently. And they're all semi-fast / stopping. We don't have any express services yet. I could, in theory, add some between Guard City St. John and Henning Hall Junction. And I'm tempted to do that, actually. Oh, this is the Guard City Great Western ones. So where are the Great Eastern ones? Oh, yeah, okay, I know what I'm doing. I should also say a lot of this time-lapse footage was recorded sort of 2-3 weeks ago, so I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what I did. Assuming that it's put them all in the correct order for this video, what you're now seeing me do is the template for the service schedules out of this depot to Guard City St. Peter. So in other words, the order list that I will copy from every time I set up a new service. There's a slow one, there's a fast one. They both go on the fast tracks up to GSP. Because I've got different waypoints going into the two sets of platforms, it's just to make sure that they go into the right ones each time. In a second then, hopefully, I do go back to GSJ and start placing down the services. It's quite long-winded actually, doing all of this. It is very, very long-winded, but it is rewarding at the end. One of the things I like to do, I think you'll see me do it in 10.5, in fact I do it for a second there as well, is I go on the stations and I click on the departures just to see the departure window and see where all the trains go. That's quite satisfying. Although one thing that has highlighted is my bus network does need rebooting again in Guard City because I changed the tick waiting times, and the vehicles just get bunched up. I don't really know why. It's quite frustrating. I do need to change it. So I think I'll be sending all the buses back to the depot in Guard City and starting again. That's my creaky door in the background you can hear, by the way. I do apologise for that. I've got my window open today because my my desktop was overheating slightly. I have, at long last, bearing in mind I bought it back in November, I have now installed additional RAM on my desktop. It's been sat on my desk for the best part of 2.5 months. It's all finally installed, yay! So video production should be a little bit slicker from now on. I'm just trying to find out what I'm doing on screen here. Oh, I think I'm checking the service schedules. Yeah, okay, so here we go. GSJ. There are 7 services. 5 of them, I believe, use the actual Guard City Great Eastern Main Line between Guard City St. John and Henning Hall Junction. And we also have an additional... Actually, no, 4 of them use the main line, I believe. And then we have an additional... might be 3, thinking about it. I'm trying to work it out. But we have some additional services that use the little branch line that we built a long time ago via Menhill City and Winston Kylestra on the high-speed line over to Nut Hill City Centre. This depot you're looking at right now, again, I do describe it in a bit more detail in 10.5. But this is the Lakeside Train Care facility. There are 2 here. There's the north one, which funny enough is to the north, and then there's the south one, which is to the south. And that's just to make sure that I can have trains from GSJ and Nut Hill City Centre serviced at the same location. I do something similar with Guard City St. Michael, but I'll talk about that next episode. GSP, I kind of painted myself into a corner because I really wanted to put the depot right next to the airport. But in doing that, I could only have it go in one direction, which means all trains from that depot will only ever go to GSP, nowhere else. Although I might have a couple that use the new platforms that I built at Great Rinston, which I'll have to show you probably at the start of next episode, actually. Right, I just shut my door, so hopefully things will have improved a little bit now. I've also made a conscious effort to make this episode a little bit shorter. So last episode, the trams, it went a little bit longer than I expected. Episode 8 though was something like, was it 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that, and that was just for one terminus station. That was just for the trains out of GSG. So for this episode, I've really tried to condense it, bearing in mind that we've got 7 services out of GSJ and a further 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 services out of GSP. I've so far, fingers crossed, managed to condense it all to around about an hour. I think it's an hour and 20, something like that. You'll know how long it is because you can check. Although if this video is premiering, you won't be able to check, but afterwards you'll be able to check how long this video actually is. That will be the norm from now on. Around about an hour is my sort of end goal. The other thing I wanted to say with regards to maps, I was originally... got a plastic bag under my foot as well, apologies for that. I was originally going to say no more maps after the Guard City terminus stations have been completed. So after this episode, I've still got GSMI to do, and then I've got GSMA to do. And besides maybe Centre Rail and some of the overground lines out of GSG and GSC, I wasn't going to do any more maps. But then I had a kind of epiphany, and I realised actually this is the worst it's ever going to be, because it's only in these episodes where I'm having to make 7 or 8 maps at a time. Once this is done, say for example I want to introduce a future service, let's say using the Centre Rail franchise, that runs between Renston Interchange and Guard City Great Renston Airport, so uses the Northern City line and connects the Guard City Great Eastern to the Great Western. I only have to make 1 map for that, and some of the lines are already in place. I will still have to trace the Northern City line itself, plus I've got to do all the speed limits and everything for that, but it's nowhere near as bad as having to do that 7 times. So I think maps will continue. Again, like I said at the start of the episode, I'm not sure how visible these maps will be. The Guard City Great Eastern one should be more visible because it's sort of like a deep maroon colour, the lines, with the text also in the same colour. I also made the backgrounds on the text a little bit more white because episode 8 I made them, I think it was 50% transparent, which didn't really make it stand out. So I've increased the opacity. So hopefully the text is a bit more legible. If it isn't, let me know in the chat. Those of you watching, hopefully there are people watching, and I'll bear that in mind for next time. I did experiment with making the text a little bit bigger, but it's... I mean, you'll see on the Great Western at Guard City Great Renston Airport just how big that text box is with the text at its current size. So if I made it bigger, it would sort of cover the map a little bit, which I didn't want to do. The other thing, of course, with Great Western is it's green, and the background in the game is predominantly green. So I'm not 100% sure how well the lines will stand out. The text might stand out a little bit better, because again, it's a green text on a white background. Those of you who were asking about the colours last time, episode 8, if you go on the information sheet, which there is a link to in the description, you will see every single main line has a colour code. So for example, Guard City Great Northern was that blue colour. The capital line was the red. Guard City Great Western is green. Guard City Great Eastern is the deep maroon colour, which you probably would have already seen by now, I hope. I think so. I have to try and put all the maps on in the right place after this, which is going to be a hell of a lot of fun. We also have the Western Reaches, which is like a purpley pink colour, which you'll see next episode. Great Northern we haven't come to yet. North Valleys, I think North Valleys I'll actually do off camera. A lot of these I'll also do off camera. So some of the linking lines, for example, the Cross Country West between the Guard City Great Western line and Sunnington up in the northwest corner of the map. I'll do that off camera. At least I'll speed limit off camera, and I'll add some skeleton services. The North Valleys line I will also do off camera once we've done the Great Northern on camera. Don't forget, the Guard City Great Northern and the Great Northern are 2 separate lines. Great Northern runs between Honingville and I think I'm going to do it to Beffing Way. Originally it ran all the way through to Gronwell Superior, but I think I'm going to cut it a little bit short. What else have we got on here? The Cross Country West line is there, funny enough. West Coast is a brown colour, which I'm not a huge fan of, so I might change that. The West Winds is orange, which... Oh, I didn't do maps for that. I was trying to remember why I didn't use the orange, but I didn't make maps when we did the West Winds line. There are some more services to be introduced on the West Winds line, so there might end up being a map created for that. I might also make these maps available on my website. One thing I'm going to do over the next few weeks is completely redo my website, because I think I've said this before. The website in its current state, m4jmedia.com, there's so much on there that doesn't work. I'm not particularly proud of it. The downloads do work, so if you want to go on and download the maps, they do work. But everything else, like if you go on the homepage, there's so many broken features. Plus, I've since updated my Twitter, so what you're seeing on my website is my new personal Twitter, which only has one tweet on it at the moment. Funny enough, the Majeffrey's name isn't very popular on Twitter for some reason. But I'll be updating the website, creating an all-new website with an all-new downloads page. I'll also try and get the upload page working, so you guys can upload images and videos of your gameplay, because I really want to share that with people. And just share these maps, that's the other thing. So I have a whole page of the website devoted to the M4J network with all the maps, all the images, all the downloads, everything like that. Let me know what you think of that. Again, you can't comment on these videos at the moment, so the best way to get in touch with me is via Twitter or via Reddit. You can either contact me directly on Reddit with a private message, although don't be offended if I don't reply, because I'm not big on private messages at the moment. I prefer everything to be out in the open so other people with similar questions can have theirs answered too. So my subreddit, I'm just actually going to check that. So according to this, I'm just going to test the link to see if it works. Okay, so my Reddit is reddit.com/user/m4j_gaming. I do need to see, because I do have a private Reddit account, or I thought I did. Reddit account. Of course I have a Reddit account. I thought I had a private Reddit subreddit. Maybe I don't. I do have one for my Patreons though, so if you support me on Patreon, you'll be able to join that, of which there are currently 2 people subscribed. I think I am one of them. That's the other thing, actually. Patreon. I can't get my words out. I don't know what's wrong with me. Patreon. My current Patreon supporter, patron, they're in their 2nd month, which means 1 more month, and they'll have access to some of the rewards. I won't name them, because I'm sure they'd like to be kept anonymous. I mean, they said in the chat in the past about supporting me and stuff like that, so you can always go back and read if if you want to. But it's kind of an advert to everyone else. My Patreon is still open. There's plenty of room for more people. It is simply $1 is the cheapest rate. $1 up to, I think it's 25. I'm just going on my Patreon now. So the first one is M4J Basic, which is $1 per month. If you're a fan of OpenTTD, so if you're watching this video, you can have a branch line named or renamed. M4J Intermediate is the next one. You can have a intermediate route named or renamed. When I say rename, I don't mean one that someone else has already named. It's one that if you've named a route and then you want to rename it, you can do so. But if someone else has already claimed a route and named it, you can't then say, I want to change that name, because that's not fair on the first person. Then we got Intermediate Plus, which means you can name or rename a mainline route. So for example, if you don't like Guard City Great Western and you want to call it something else, you are allowed to do so. Although, again, small disclaimer, no stupid names. I do have the power to veto. My decision is final and all that power-hungry language. Basically what I mean is if you decide to call it the Monster Raving Loony route or something like that, I'm allowed to turn around and say, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. Don't let that put you off though. If you want to name it after yourself, I also have a couple of rules regarding that. But if, for example, Guard City Great Western, if you don't like that name, if you want to call it the M4J Great Western, I'm just coming up with an idea, please don't use that one. You'll be allowed to do so. If you just want to rename it Great Western, for example, you can do that. Or if you want to name it the Special Great Western, or I'm literally spitballing names right now, you can do that. After M4J Intermediate Plus, we then got M4J Silver. This is where it gets interesting. You can name or rename a mainline route, and you can name a small franchise. So as well as naming the route, you can also choose a franchise. So for in this instance, it'll be a very small franchise. So the North Valleys franchise is quite a small one because it only really runs between Sunnington and Beffingway, and it runs on a couple of lines, but it's predominantly the North Valleys line. So if you want to, you can rename something like the Guard City Great Northern route, and then you can also rename a small franchise such as the North Valleys franchise. You can also have a small section of Bar City named after you. I think originally it was Guard City, and I realised there's no point doing that because all the areas of Guard City have already been named through people's suggestions. So I don't really want to take away from that. But Bar City is a blank canvas. It's currently still in its infancy, embryonic stages. So over there's loads of places that haven't yet been built or named. So you can have a small section of Bar City named after something of your choosing as well. And in those instances, I'm more willing to allow you to name things after yourself, because certain parts of London, for example, are named after key people. Then we've got M4J Gold, which is $20 per month. Did I read out the other values? I'll go back to the beginning very quickly. M4J Basic is $1, Intermediate is $5, Intermediate Plus is $10, Silver is $15, Gold is $20. Which means you can name or rename a mainline route, name or rename a medium-sized franchise, and then a medium section of Bar City. And again, I said medium section of Bar City. I think I might just change that to maximum of 3 sections of Bar City. So I'll have to remember to do that. And then you've got Excelsior, which is $25 a month, and that is the top tier. If you're a fan of OpenTTD, you can name or rename a mainline route, name any unclaimed franchise, but only a maximum of 1 at a time. So in other words, you can have like the Guard City Great Northern franchise, and then if you don't want that one anymore, if you want to change it to something else, I'll revert the Great Northern franchise to its original name, and then you can rename any other unclaimed franchise. And you can also have a maximum, currently it says 3, I'm going to change it to 5 sections of Bar City. There are other perks for other games as well. I'm only reading out the OpenTTD specific ones. So there's the incentive to become a patron. You also then have access to my Patreon Reddit, where you can, talk to me. You can request things in videos, that kind of thing. So like I said a few weeks ago now, comments have been disabled on the channel. I still think it's one of the best decisions I ever made. It's very nice to have a quiet life. People are still commenting on the old videos from way back when. I think it's the most recent 500 I'd turned off comments. And then all new videos will also have comments turned off. If in the future things improve and I want to open things up for the audience again, I will allow comments. It's not so much that I don't want you guys to contact me, because I do. But I want you to contact me through other channels, because the YouTube comment section is a very toxic place, and it's very easy to get sucked into that toxicity even if you don't mean to. So I think in future, for everyone's sake, it'll be a lot easier if I set up something like a subreddit where people can talk to me. You can also talk to me through the OpenTTD subreddit, for example. If you put a post on there and tag me in it, I'll be able to see it because I'll get a notification about it. Don't just put something on there saying I love your videos, because that's not what the OpenTTD subreddit is for. You can do that on mine, but don't do it on the OpenTTD one. Please use it properly. I think this is going to sound really stupid because I've just talked about not having the comments turned on, but YouTube themselves last week posted a tweet. Basically, they've got this new system now where if you're under 1,000 subscribers, you don't have monetization. I mean, that's been around for about 12.5 months now. It feels like yesterday that I lost my status, but it's over a year now, which is a bit hard to believe. Actually, it's not a year. I think it was the 20th of February it happened. Yeah, doomsday, as I like to call it. Anyway, they are realizing now that there are lots of good channels with less than 1,000 subscribers, and I do actually appreciate the fact that they are acknowledging that. So they have a new system now where if you are a channel of less than 1,000 subscribers, either you or your audience, there is a specific tweet that if you reply to talking about the channel and why it's a good channel, or what makes it special, they'll do a shout out. Now, I don't normally do this, and it's a bit new and a bit foreign to me, so you have to bear with me. But if you come across that tweet, or if you go on my Twitter, you'll see that I have replied to that tweet. I would really appreciate if those with a Twitter account took the time just to reply to that YouTube tweet with a little message about the channel. Basically, we are so close to 1,000 subscribers right now. I feel like a system like this, a little push like this from YouTube would be enough to get us over the line, and that would be a big deal. Getting to 1,000 subscribers was always one of my goals when I first set up my channel, and it became more so last year when the monetization guidelines came in. So it literally just takes 30 seconds. You can write whatever you like about the channel. It doesn't necessarily have to be positive. If you want to leave honest feedback, you're more than welcome to do so. But anyone who does help get the channel noticed by YouTube for that shout out, I really would appreciate it. That would genuinely mean a lot to me. So thank you in advance to anyone who will go ahead and do that. Alright, sorry for the little pause there. The audio might glitch a little bit where I've stopped and started the recording again. I just had to run and get my magazine, because for the rest of this episode I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the rail industry. There's some good things going on right now, and there's some not so good things going on right now. We'll probably start down the negative end of things, shall we? Crossrail was delayed at the end of last year. It was supposed to be December 2018 that the core section between Abbeywood and Paddington started running, but for some unknown reason it was delayed. Then there was a whole cost issue involved. I think they were £1.4 billion short. So various loans and grants and all that kind of thing has taken place. And the goal was to try and get it running by December 2019, so this year. However, last month and the month before, there was talk about even that being delayed, which I don't think is good. I actually think at this point, because a lot of this Crossrail project was funded by taxpayers, by TfL. I think the Department for Transport put some loans in as well. So I think the people have a right to know what's going on. If there's something really bad happened, like one of the contractors let them down, or some legal issue that's taken place, then maybe dress it up in euphemisms a little bit. But be honest. That's all I would say about it. Be honest. Come out, somebody, and tell us what is going on with Crossrail. Because even the Twitter account for the Elizabeth line went very quiet towards the end of last year. And the £15 billion railway, the TV show that was on last year, there's actually a second series of it coming in a couple of weeks' time. Everything was done on schedule. Everything was completed on schedule in those episodes. And I know that the media lies and things like that, but everything I read on Twitter, all the articles I read about it, all the shows I saw on TV about it, it was running on schedule. And then suddenly it all went wrong. Personally, I think it's something to do with the station fit-outs. I think the fact that it's tube tunnels. It's not just like Thameslink, where even though the Thameslink trains are longer, it's subsurface, so there's ventilation and things like that. Crossrail, it's very deep underground, so ventilation is a key issue, and I think that's been one of the factors involved, is airflow and air quality and things like that. Obviously on the platforms it's a different matter because they're sealed off with the screen doors, but I think in the tunnels there's been a lot of environmental issues that have been slightly problematic, plus track laying I think got delayed for some reason. But we do need someone just to come out and say, we're not going to lie to you, this is what's happened. There will still be people annoyed by it, no doubt about that, but the fact is, if they come out and they're honest about it, more people will try to understand. There will always be outcry, there will always be people saying, fire whoever was responsible, but ultimately honesty is the best policy in matters like this. The question is now, is someone going to come out and say anything? And the answer is probably no. And along those lines, Bombardier are probably not the best right now. And again, I'm choosing my words very carefully. So the Class 3, 4, 5s, which are the Crossrail trains, they seem to be operating okay. There were some small teething problems when they were first introduced, but you expect that. Whether they're the result of, or whether they're the cause, of the delays to Crossrail, I don't actually know. But outside of the tunnels, on the lines from Liverpool Street out to Shenfield, and also from Paddington out to Hayes and Harlington, they seem to be working fine. I don't know where we are in terms of them running to Heathrow yet, but the rest of the network outside of the tunnels, everything seems to be okay at the moment. However, the Class 345 software that the trains used was based on the Electrostars, which is probably one of the reasons why teething problems were fairly minimal, because there's so many different classes of Electrostars, they all have their own software. So to copy it over and then just adapt it for that type of train, it was probably relatively easy. The Class 710s, which are the new London Overground trains, are also Aventras, which is what the 345s are, but they're using a brand new operating system, brand new software. They have been delayed for over a year now, maybe even longer than that. And as a result of that, London Overground is in trouble. So the Goblin line, which is the Gospel Oak to Barking line, it connects the North London line at Gospel Oak to the, I think it's the London Tilbury and Southend line at Barking. I'm trying to remember now. I think District, is it District line, or the Hammersmith City also goes to Barking? Someone will correct me on that in the chat. I'm sure they will. Someone always corrects me. Even when I disable comments, someone still finds a way to correct me. Anyway, currently that line is operated using Turbostars Class 172s. By the end of March, all those trains are due to have been returned. Their leases are expiring, and there's no option to renew. So at the moment, TfL are using Class 378s, which are the Capital Stars, which are used on the other lines around the London Overground network. They're being used at the moment to run the service on the Gospel Oak to Barking line. I think there's one currently being used with a couple more. Because of that, they've had to have been adapted from 5 cars back down to 4, because the platforms are only long enough for 4-car trains. The Class 710s are only going to be 4-car trains. And I just think the whole thing is a farce, to be honest. This brand new Aventra model, which every single operator in the last sort of 2 years has ordered Aventra trains for their new franchise, and yet apart from the Crossrail trains, which are based on the Capital Stars, all the other ones are delayed. It's not a good advert, and maybe it's not Bombardier's fault. I know in the past with some of the Electrostars there was actually a supply issue, so Bombardier weren't able to get parts in to build the trains, and that's not a Bombardier problem, that's a supply problem. That's a different matter. But these Aventras, I don't think they're particularly nice to look at in the first place. I actually prefer the Electrostars and the Capital Stars. They've got this weird snub nose, particularly on the Crossrail trains, and I know the 710s have got the same design. They're not great. I think the ones for Greater Anglia look a little bit better. Is it Greater Anglia? I think Greater Anglia have got Aventras coming as well. I know they've got the Stadlers, but I think they've got Aventras too. Again, someone will correct me, someone always corrects me. So that's a thing. TfL aren't exactly in everyone's good books right now, particularly when it comes to new trains. Northern have also got their own problems with their new trains. New trains in general seems to be an issue right now. And the thing that I find most baffling is when up in Scotland, the new Hitachis, the 385s I think they were, or the 380s, when there was problems with them because of the curved windscreen, they went and took old networker trains, so the Class 365s from Great Northern. They actually took those up to Scotland and operated those. And even though the new trains are now being introduced, some of the networkers are actually being kept for the time being. And I think that's a great example of how to make use of a train. Personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with the networkers. I always enjoyed riding on them going into London. I really like the design of them. I think they look quite sleek and modern, considering they were designed back in the late 80s, early 90s. So I think it's sad that they're pretty much all being wiped out now by these Aventras and other new models of train that aren't working. And that's the other thing of teething problems. There's teething problems, and then there's just a bad design. And I think we're starting to cross over into that bad design category now. The editor's notes of this magazine sums it up very well. Some franchises now, in order to win the franchise, companies are promising to order trains that haven't even been designed yet. and that is a problem, because then that means a rush production line, which means bad products. So hopefully something's done about that, because it's getting to be a joke, really. This whole thing, the UK rail industry has gone from being one of the best in the world to being an absolute laughingstock. So I really hope something is done about that. So I'm going to stop talking about the bad stuff now, and I am going to start talking about some of the more positive things that are going on. So the East to West Rail, I don't know where I got coast from, East to West Rail, they are now starting to consider new routes between Bedford and Cambridge. There are 5 routes under consideration. The one I think is best is Route C. It'll cost $2.5 billion, which is about mid-range between the cheapest and the most expensive. And I know, you know, $2.5 billion, we throw that number out there, it'll probably cost about 15 by the time it's actually built. But it will go between Bedford. There'll be a new station at Bedford called Bedford South. Bedford is the current northern terminus of the Thameslink, the northwestern terminus, I should say, of the Thameslink network. So that'll be a good connection there. It also goes through a place called Tempsford, which I must admit I'm not 100% sure where that is. The reason I like this route is because it's the only one that actually connects directly to the East Coast Main Line and doesn't require a rebuilding of Sandy Station. There's also Bassingbourn, which I think is also on the East Coast Main Line. And then it goes east again towards Cambridge. I think that's a good one. The East Coast Main Line is quite congested, particularly between Peterborough and London, so that might be slightly problematic. But having an existing station structure, or at least one existing station structure, rather than having to rebuild stations everywhere, would mean a more slick process in actually getting it built. So I think that's why I prefer that option. The most expensive option requires rebuilding of the Midland Main Line around Bedford and relocating the Thameslink depot, which I think is too much. I think that's overkill. But it's good that they're still considering building this east-west link, because I did think at one point, particularly all the problems with Crossrail, I did think that new rail routes are off the radar at the moment. But it's good to see that they're at least considering it, because the more they consider it, the more chance it's actually going to happen. There's also talk of what's been described as a rail revolution in the West Midlands, particularly with the construction of the first phase of High Speed 2, which is due to be completed in 2026, but again I think closer to 2030 is a more realistic deadline at the moment. But they're talking about new hubs, new trains which are already on the way, adventurers are involved, new stations. I think there's a new station currently being designed for somewhere in the Midlands, I can't remember where. There was another new station that opened in the Midlands quite recently as well. So it's good. Birmingham is due to host the, I want to say, Commonwealth Games in 2020, next year. No, not 2020, 2022. 2020 is the Olympics in Tokyo. I think I'm just going to check that actually. 20 Commonwealth Games. Yeah, Birmingham. So the Midland Metro, which is the tram network, is getting extended and expanded and just beefed up in general to be able to cope with that. Plus all the stations are being renovated and refurbished. New trains. It's looking good, because the Midlands, I think, was one area, West Midlands in particular, was one area that was perhaps starting to look a little bit run down. They rebuilt New Street, but actually what they did was they rebuilt the top of New Street and the bottom just looks the same as it always did, which is quite depressing. I've never actually been there, but I've seen videos and photos and I just feel every time I look at it, because it's really dark and dingy on the platforms. They could just put strip LED lighting on the platform edges or something and that would make it look a little bit nicer. Anyway, I'm not an interior designer, so don't quote me on any of that. Elsewhere in the country, and I'm just skipping to the right page of the magazine. There's some stuff going on around the world as well, which is always interesting. The Metrolink extension to the Trafford Centre is looking good at the moment. Looks like it's going to be done on time. They're also going to be bringing in new safety regulations on the tram link in Croydon after the unfortunate crash that happened there a couple of years ago. Safety is paramount on the UK network. There was a crash at Waterloo last year. It was a low speed, I think it was a derailment, and then two trains collided. how that happened, I don't 100% know. It was something to do with faulty wiring. Some wiring was done without the proper certification, which meant that that little section of track wasn't safe to operate. So that'll be investigated, that'll be sorted out. As long as it's low speed collisions like that, it's obviously bad, but it's not as bad as some of the other things that have been going on. There was a really bad train crash in Denmark recently, which it's one of those unfortunate cases. There was no problems with signalling or point work or anything like that. It was a trailer on the back of a freight train came loose and collided with a passenger train on the adjacent track, and it's things like that that it's like a freak accident, really. There's not much you can do apart from bolting things down more securely, which is what the recommendation is. You know, you can't really predict something like that to happen at that exact moment, so it's very unfortunate. But we're always learning, and that's the main thing. I want to get on to positive things. I just went negative again. A new hydrogen train has been unveiled. The Class 321s, which currently operate, I think, in Scotland and also out of Liverpool Street. I think the 321s still operate there. They are currently converting one to operate with hydrogen, and if that is successful, they'll then expand it across the fleet. That's good. The new Trans-Pennine Express Class 802s, which are the IETs, the Intercity Express train variation, they're looking good. They're looking very good, actually, in their livery. I really like the blue with the black and the silver down the sides. There's a picture I see here of one sitting next to a Pendolino, and actually they make the Pendolinos look big. I used to always think the Pendolinos look quite sleek and modern, but these new trains look very nice indeed. The new Stadler units for Greater Anglia are now on test. The 12-car variations are on test in the Czech Republic. The smaller variations are on test here in the UK. The fact that they're here is good, because it means they're actually being built. Great Western Railway have just accepted the final Class 800 that they ordered into traffic, which means that that side of things is all done. Now the LNER side of things can begin, the 800s and the 801s. The new Caledonian sleeper stock is almost ready for full testing. They did a few test runs on my birthday, actually. They did some test runs a couple of weeks ago. The first test run from Glasgow to Euston was done on my birthday, so I was quite happy to see that. What else? Oh yes, Class 717s, which is what I talked about or crammed in at the end of last episode. So for those of you that don't know, the Class 700s are the new Thameslink trains, the 8-car, 12-car variations. I still think they look a bit bulky. They look a bit wide. I don't know whether it's just the design of the cab at the front makes them look wider than they actually are, because as far as I'm aware, all rolling stock in the UK is built to the same size or smaller. There's nothing that can go wider than what already exists. So it's a little unusual seeing the 700s when they were first designed, but the 717s are the 6-car versions of that that will operate on the Moorgate branch on the Northern City line between Stevenage, Hertford, and Moorgate. Oh, and Welwyn Garden City, of course. They look okay. Again, they look like 700s, so I'm not a massive fan. They've also got this weird door thing built into the cab ends, which it's great for safety. Like I said, safety is important. Let me just shut my door again. There we go. That was a loud bang. They are good for safety, but I don't like them. They don't look very nice. That's my only concern. And to be honest, if my only concern is aesthetics, then they must be a pretty decent train after all. And there's also some Electrostars, the Class 387s for Great Western Railway. They're being converted for use on Heathrow Express services, which implies that will be starting up very, very shortly. Besides that, I think that's it for rail news, really. There's all sorts of things going on. Like I said, Crossrail is the main dominance at the moment, and it is really disappointing, because Crossrail was supposed to be like our crown and glory, really. Having this brand spanking new rail line running through the heart of London, connecting east to west for the first time. It was supposed to be exciting, and it's sort of become a bit of a an embarrassment and a disappointment. It's really sad to see that. But hey, something went wrong somewhere, and hopefully we learn from it for future projects. I'm just reading some of the other news. Track renewal is always a thing. There's always track being renewed somewhere. New station designs, new station refurbishments. Yeah, besides that, I think that's it for rail news. So let's go back and talk about the future of this series, because that's something else I'm keen to get across as well. I've got 20 more minutes. I'm probably going to talk for a few more minutes, and then I'm just going to let the music take over for the rest of the episode. Originally, I was just going to do this as pure time-lapse with occasional commentary, but it's been so long since the last episode, and it's also been so long since the last video I've made, it made more sense to actually do something a bit more like this. So sit down and talk about rail news, what's going on in the world, because I know there are people out there who watch these videos that are interested in that side of things. I'm interested in that side of things as well, so there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, the future of this series, like I said, the map work has been very taxing. Once I get a system in place for creating these maps, because at the moment it really is a case of import the screenshot that I took a long time ago, which I probably need to update it actually, because a lot of the track has since been rebuilt, but it's a rough approximation, so it doesn't matter too much. So I took this screenshot of the whole map a long time ago. You will recognize it as the thumbnail for all of these videos. I then import that into Adobe Illustrator, crop it to the right size so that the right stations are on show, make it fit the average size monitor, which is about 1280 by 720. Some people have bigger, some people have smaller. All my videos are rendered at that size, so it makes sense to actually make the maps that size, although for some reason in editing it goes a little bit different, but hey ho. Then I trace the routes in Illustrator using the line tool, and then I add the stations. So I've kind of got it a modular setup at the moment, so I can, all the stations are on their own layer, so for some services stop at a station and some don't, I can just toggle off the visibility so that I can hide it. And then I've set up all the lines as well, so that for example on the Great Western line between GSP and Garden City Great Winfield Airport is one block, and then the airport to Woolworth is another block, and then Woolworth to Plindon or Woolworth to Gronville West is another block. They're two separate blocks, those last two. And then I just switch them on and off as necessary and save the images. So it's about as streamlined as possible right now. The really tedious bit is tracing the route. Once that's done, putting the stations on can be a little bit boring, I suppose is the right word. It's not the most entertaining thing in the world. I tend to talk to my friends on Discord whilst I'm doing it. But the end result is worth it. And like I said with the maps, the text might not necessarily be visible on the videos. The text is kind of there just to show where the stations are. And if you can read the text, you'll be able to see what stations there are. But it's better than just having dotted lines at various points where stations are. There's at least something there that tells you that that is a station and which station it is. For some routes it's quite obvious which stations are the main stations and which aren't. The thing I found really funny was I always thought like the Garden City Great Northern route was the busiest in terms of stations, trains, things like that. And I also thought that the Great Western route had more stations than the Great Eastern route, because the Great Eastern has huge gaps between stations where you can go for a good sort of 5-10 minutes without stopping. It's only when I did these maps that I realised, yes, the Great Northern route has a lot of stations, but it only has a lot of stations because the Capital Line exists. Take out the Capital Line and have it as just one route, and it actually has the same number of stations there or thereabouts as the Great Western route. And the Great Western route actually has less stations than the Great Eastern route. So when you start seeing things like that, it's teaching me a lot about my network that I never knew about before. The other thing was the Great Northern route is actually shorter than the Great Western and the Great Eastern routes. So in terms of actually tracing the map, it was a lot easier to do it on the Great Northern route. It's also a straighter route. That's the other thing. What was the other point I was going to make to do with Great Northern? Something to do with stations and schedules and things like that. I think I said it actually. Let's do the capital line. Capital line is it's one of those little things. I enjoyed doing it, but at the same time, oof, not again. If I'm going to do routes in future, I'm just going to do one route at a time or one service at a time and make a map. Because that Great Northern one took a long time. It took about, I think it was 5 days solid working to actually get it done, which was not ideal. I'm sure there was one more point I was going to make about the Great Northern route. And then I started talking about something else and I forgot what it was. That's not very professional. We're almost done with placing the trains now. There are... Let me do some quick calculations. So in the Great Eastern, there were 48 new trains added. And the Great Western, there were 45 new trains added. So what's that? 48, 45, that's 103 new trains... 93 new trains were added. The train count is going up significantly. I think is it 50,000 is the absolute ceiling? Someone asked me recently if I was ever going to hit that number. I highly doubt it, to be honest. I see a lot of pictures on the subreddit about people's networks, and they're always talking about how they've managed to hit the vehicle limit. And I look at their lines, and they're so slapdash. And I mean that with the greatest respect. But some of the lines that people have designed is crazy. And that it's kind of like what I did in the past with the Guard City Connect franchise. It's literally one corner of the map to the other corner of the map. And they have about 500 trains just running that service. It's fine if it works. You know, I'm not going to judge that and say it's stupid, because I don't think it's stupid. I think it's quite smart. Because they're not playing the same game as I am. They're playing the... try and be as efficient as possible, whereas I'm playing try and be as realistic as possible. So we are approaching the same thing from two different angles essentially. But I don't think I'll ever hit the vehicle cap unless I start putting down hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bus lines, or if I do the Guard City taxis again, or the trams, or something like that, where there's a lot of vehicles in a very small area. Because in terms of the rail, I don't think I'll ever hit the vehicle cap there, because there's not enough space, there's not enough paths on the routes for the number of trains that I would need. And actually already, excuse me, just took a drink and nearly choked on it. On the Great Eastern route, Reningbury, which never used to be a terminus station but now is, I had to build an additional platform there because too many trains were waiting to terminate in the one platform, and it was causing some congestion. Like, trains were backed up all the way back to Guard City almost. So I think it was George De Silva asked me a long time ago, when I was doing the realism initiative in the Jeffries network. He was asking me if I was going to upgrade platforms and build additional platforms. I think it was him. It was either him or James that asked me about it, and I said most definitely. And at the time I thought, you know, maybe some stations would get intentionally rebuilt. Like some of the platforms would be changed. Guard City Great Winfield Airport is a good example of that. You might have noticed there, it looks a little bit different to how it used to. I think it's in 10.5 actually, you see me rebuild that station. So the slow lines and the fast lines are now separated. It's no longer the fast lines run between the slow lines like it used to. I think I have the same thing for the Western Reaches line for the first bit out of Guard City. But yeah, station rebuilds are definitely happening, both on and off camera, and some of them more successful than others. GSJ is getting a little bit congested as well because there's a lot of trains running in and out of there. I think apart from having some additional fast services go to GSJ, of which there are platforms that can still take those trains, I think we're done with the Great Eastern, or at least trains running into Guard City. Maybe 2 express services, one that goes via Henning Hall and one that goes via the northern branch. But besides that, I think we're pretty much done with that one. Whereas the Great Western, there's a lot more that needs to be done. The cross-country routes, for example, Centre Rail, a sleeper service maybe. I'm thinking of putting in that long platform at GSP that's never been used. That's what that was originally built for, was some kind of sleeper or special service. More on that in the future. The Great Northern Route also needs more services. The Guard City Connect services, for example. There's also, I think again it was George De Silva gave me the idea. We have the cross country. He said when he downloaded the Majeffries network map that he introduced another type of service like that. I can't remember what I think he called it cross country local or something like that. So I've sort of borrowed that idea. I'm going to have cross country and cross region, and they're going to be two different things. So cross country is going to be, as the name suggests, one side of the map to the other pretty much. Cross region is going to be more along the lines of so it's currently called Center Rail, but linking the north of the map to the south of the map via Guard City. So in the future, when we jump forward to the 2000s, getting the Thameslink trains, the 700s, and running them through Guard Lake, that would be either Guard City Connect or Cross Region. I haven't decided. Maybe we'll have both services, because there's nothing really stopping me from running extra services through Guard Lake. Capacity is the only thing that would stop me doing that, but I can always add more bridges if necessary, like if absolutely necessary. What was the other idea that I was going to talk about? There was another really good one for cross region. I suppose some of the more localized ones. So Sunnington up in the northwest. If I ran a service from there down the cross country west line to somewhere like Woolworth, that would technically be a cross region rather than a cross country, because it's, in terms of the map, it's barely gone anywhere, even if it covers a lot of stations and a lot of ground. So that's going to happen in the near future as well. Once the North Valleys route is done and the cross country west route is done, I can start adding services like that. But yeah, a lot of these main lines are nearing completion. The Western Reaches line, in its current state, will also be done by the end of next episode. So all the stopping services and all the express services have already been planned out. The route down to, is it Sanley Central, I think it is, in the southwest corner of the map, that will not be done next episode. That will be done in a future episode, because I've had an idea for a brand new line that would work Sanley into it, connecting Guard City with the southwest. So I'm not going to give too much away right now, so you'll have to come back and watch in the future for when that takes place. Right, hopefully I've covered everything. If there are questions, hopefully if I get this video rendered in time, because it's coming up to 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm trying to get this video done for tonight. Hopefully you'll be watching this on Thursday, let's put it that way. If not, I will have to delay it to Friday, but you'll know that by now because you'll be watching it on whatever day it's premiering. If you're watching this on playback afterwards, then you don't need to worry about this bit. One thing I will say on Friday though is I'm going to be recording a podcast at the time that this would be premiering at, so I might not be 100% watching the chat. But any questions that you do have, please do put them in the chat if you're watching this live. Don't hold back, because like I said, comments are disabled. So if you have a question about the series or about the map or about trains in general, ask away. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Whatever the question is, I will do my best to answer it. If you're going to ask about future projects, bear in mind that there are things that I don't want to reveal too much about at this moment. It's not that I'm avoiding the question necessarily, it's more either I haven't finished the idea, so I'm not happy to talk about it just yet, or I want to leave a little bit of suspense, because you know, you got to leave the viewers wanting more, blah blah blah. But yeah, I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to let the music take over because my voice is getting a little bit sore. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Sorry that it's been 2 weeks since the last episode. Hopefully next week, as I said, I've already recorded the bulk of the time lapses for next week. I just need to do the maps, which is probably the worst bit, as I've already said. But between now and next week, I'll be working on a lot of stuff on Illustrator anyway, so I'll try and get these maps done so I can get the video out on time. Next week's episode will also be premiered. The week after, let me just look at my plans. Yeah, so next week's will be premiered. The week after won't be. So for that, if you have any questions, you'll have to tweet me or ask me on Reddit. But then the week after that, actually the week after that might not be premiered either. So it'll be a couple more weeks after that when we do GSMA that I'll be able to premiere and you'll be able to ask questions again. So all the more reason for you to ask questions that you have this week or next week. But until then guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you get notified when all videos go up and when all live streams are about to happen. And premieres, they count as live streams for some reason. And also head over to m4jmedia.com and subscribe to the calendars so you never miss an upload and you never miss a stream. Also follow me on Twitter so you can keep up to date with all things M4J, and head over to my Reddit account as well and either subscribe to my Reddit or just keep tabs on what I'm doing on there. And if you want to support me on Patreon, link is in the description. Any tier is appreciated. There's no hierarchy or anything like that. The only difference in the tiers really is the rewards you get. Anyone who does pledge will be able to go onto my Discord as well, and you'll be able to ask me questions there about the series too. Thank you very much once again for watching guys, and until next time, I will see you soon.